welcome back to Some Talks About, where we watch films and talk about them. If you're new here, subscribe so we can talk about films together. The film I picked to talk about today is Cruella. I saw it a while ago when the cinemas just opened back up. The film was okay, but when I walked out of the cinemas, I felt a bit of emptiness in me, and I wanted to talk about that. It's like the feeling when you get a sugar rush and then afterwards when it crashes you just feel empty. I don't enjoy hating certain films, and I certainly don't want to base my entire personality around that. That's what Twitter is for. So I don't want to go through this film cinema sin style and tell you every single thing that they fucked up, because that's not what this channel is about, and I don't want to start doing this either. It had all of the ingredients. Great cast, great set design, script that follows a very tight 3-arc story, and compelling people, very smart lines. But for some reason, it just felt a little bit empty, and it's hard to pinpoint what is the exact issue in it. So I want to try to get to that. I want to go through a few of the points where I think they missed the mark a little bit, but please take my opinion with a grain of salt. This is just my opinion from one person who went to the film and saw it. I love to talk about films, but I'm not a professional film critic. I can only talk about my feelings and my opinion and how this film made me feel. And I hope that we can start a discussion based on what we all think about this film. And in the end, it's about the experience of going to the film, and this is an excellent film to do that. So to very shortly go through the plot, Cruella is a fashion heist movie that stars Emma Stone as Cruella and Emma Thompson as the Baroness. The titular Cruella is a genius costume making designer, and the Baroness, played by Emma Thompson, is a very successful fashion designer and tastemaker in the film. And Cruella finds out that the Baroness, somewhere in the middle of the film, I think early on, finds out that the Baroness is the one who was responsible for the killing of her mother that made her grow up as an orphan. So this movie is about her plotting her revenge and trying to upstage her, and that's like the whole part of it that makes it so fun. So the Baroness, she represents the establishment, and Cruella represents the disruption that is coming to change all of that dynamic. You could tell that Disney really wanted to make this film work, because Cruella the movie as a concept sounds badass. And Cruella is a badass woman, and she's beloved in the Disney fandom. But an obstacle to that problem is that it's not that simple to translate an animation character to a live action movie. It's not a direct translation, because in an animated character, we are more forgiving for certain things to happen to them. And with live action characters, there's a certain degree of realism that the audience expect these characters to adhere to. For example, it's much easier for the audience to suspend their disbelief about a character with black and white hair. I will see that character and just assume that that's part of the character design, and I will say, yeah, sure, this is what we're working with, okay. But for a live action character, oftentimes we need to tone down some of the more cartoonish designs in animation to kind of bring it back to live action, to make it more like real people that are acting in it. And I think that's where most of the problem starts, because Cruella the character in the animation needs very little explanation. And Disney is trying to reimagine this character for the silver screen with Emma Stone in the main role. And I think I won't say perfected, but they've done this in the past with explaining why certain characters are the way they are, and they kind of just, throw up their hands and say, she has black and white hair because she's born this way. It's like a real thing that we just have to just give up. Like, no doctor looked at this little child and think, why is her hair black and white? It's just their explanation needs further explanation. And I think that's the problem when you start to explain things that didn't need explanation in the first place. So yes, the hair, you can just explain it. What about the rest of the traits that defines this character? She skins puppies and make coats out of them, and that was the main reason why she was trying to capture these little puppies in the original 1960 movie. But in this movie, they kind of erased all of that and portrayed Cruella as this misunderstood, manic girl who is mostly a nice person. And guys, she really loves dogs. Like, it's a total misunderstanding that she makes fur coats out of them. It's not true. And we make her seem like she's such a dog lover that she's basically with a dog in every single scene in the movie. She's always with a dog, either with her friend's dog or her own dog or her enemy's dogs. Like, she's always with dogs. And because of that, there's a lot of exposition throwaway lines that just casually explains a lot of her character traits that makes her iconic. And again, it's just exposition that needs further explanation, while the original movie didn't have the baggage of that because it's an animation film. They try so hard to reuse their intellectual property that frankly they will do anything to reclaim this character. And let me just say that this film is Cruella by name only. I am not angry about this because I have no attachment to this character. I did not grow up with her. I don't have any nostalgia factor that hits when I see her character and the way they treated her character. But I just wish that Disney used this script for any other character, because this is not the origin story of Cruella that anybody asked for. Nobody asked for a Cruella origin story at all. In the end, there were just so many plot holes that they have to cover up with more explanations. They tried so hard with the explanation of the dog skinning part, the hair different color part, and the unusual first name and last name part. Cruella the film could have been a standalone film without Cruella in it, and they will not have had to carry this much baggage of this character. They would have saved themselves so much work if they didn't have to write around Cruella the Vil. But then again, Cruella is famous, so I guess people would just go in and watch a film with her in it. But then again, I don't think she's that famous to warrant that type of knowledge. I find this a little bit of a misstep and a bit unfortunate of the, I don't want to say film nowadays. Disney is really killing creativity out there. So for the rest of this video, I'm going to treat Cruella as a standalone film and pretend she's a new character that doesn't have all this IP baggage from the 1960s. The time period of this film is a bit hard to pinpoint. At first I thought it was in the 1960s because of the mall that Cruella was working in the beginning is a kind of stuffy department store that sold very big dresses that were popular in the 1960s and 50s. But then I also saw the buildings that they were using, and the landscape of London is just not helpful at all to help me pin down because the buildings are so historical. And in the end, I finally found out that the film is in the 70s. There were like some visual cues. For example, there were a lot of people wearing a big hair and like big blowouts and bell-bottom trousers. But I think the designers had a lot of fun with the idea of the film being hard to pin down when it comes to the time era. So there was a lot of different era of clothing thrown in. There was a scene where they had a party where they played French aristocracy from, the 1800s. So it's a lot of fun where they just mishmash all these different time periods to make an interesting aesthetic out of it. I kind of wonder what the fashion historians think about this one. They created a film that is extremely fashion forward, and I think it's the most memorable part about this film. It's about all these different looks that Emma Stone and Emma Thompson are pulling off. What was weird for me about the rivalry between Emma Stone's Cruella and Emma Thompson's The Baroness is that Cruella is trying to upstage the Baroness by calling her the past and Cruella labeling herself as the future. I'm sure you've seen pictures of her with war paint with the word future on her face. If not, I'll just put it here. For me, it feels a bit weird because by all accounts, the Baroness is considered the contemporary. She's at the top of her game. There's no sign of her slowing down. At the beginning, she was very well respected. On the newspaper, they're saying that she's the best one in the season. So no one is hinting at Emma Thompson is losing inspiration. She's stealing ideas from other people. She doesn't have her own ideas. But then again, a lot of designers also have a lot of other designers help them design things. So I don't see that as a problem. If she has a good eye and good taste in curation, then I don't see the problem in that. So for me to see Cruella label the Baroness as the past, and I think based on what? Is it because she's older? But there are no other indication to believe that the Baroness is the past other than the fact that she's older. And I think that's a bit of an ageist take from the filmmakers. Don't get me wrong, it's absolutely fine the way she was upstaging her, by making something bigger and better and newer. That's not the problem. But she could have done it in many ways other than calling her old. But I guess calling someone old and irrelevant will always hurt no matter who you are and where you are, because it's a insecurity in all of us that we are afraid of being irrelevant and no longer in the know. Yeah, maybe that's why. And about the heist part, although Cruella is a pickpocketer by trade, she is also a extremely talented costume designer. There are still a lot of fun heist stuff, hijinks, where Cruella tries to steal her mother's necklace back from the Baroness because she saw the Baroness wearing it, and the Baroness was like, "Oh, this is my necklace that was stolen from me," something like that. Emma was like, no, my mother didn't. So she was like, okay, I'm gonna get all my friends, I'm gonna steal it back. And then later on, she found out that her mother was actually killed by her as well. She kind of put two and two together and realized that her mother died not of an accident, but because the Baroness called the dogs to her. So there were multiple parts in the film where they tried to steal the necklace back from the Baroness, and I think my favorite heist project from them was when the Baroness is already suspecting that Cruella is the one who is causing all of this, and she put all of her clothes, like all of her new season's clothes, in this safe, to keep them away from everybody. So it's going to be away from everything until the day of the fashion show. But turns out one of the pieces that Cruella made that looked like gold nugget turns out to be cocoons of moths that destroyed all the other dresses inside the safe. So that was hilarious. I did not expect that. That was extremely creative from the filmmakers. And then she has a separate fashion show for the people who left the Baroness's disastrous fashion show, though they went to her, and she's right across at the fountain. And then Jasper, who is one of the lackeys, is on the electric guitar, and that's why I was like, okay, this is definitely not 1800s because he has a guitar. And then he just starts playing. There was no any indication that he was musical in any way, but he just started playing, and he was extremely talented in it as well. Jasper in this film is hot. I don't make the rules. I don't know why. If you have seen the original 1961 or even the 1990s one with Glenn Close, they were never, I guess, sex symbols. But in this one, he kind of have a crush on Cruella, which is gross because they keep saying that they are family. But then, you guys grew up together. Basically siblings, y'all. It's weird. I don't think the feelings from Jasper was reciprocated by Cruella, and she's kind of mostly oblivious through most of the film about his feelings towards her. He's not happy that Cruella is becoming increasingly more neurotic and takes more risk and more negligence towards his safety. And this is one of those things that the animation film didn't have to spend a lot of time explaining, but they felt the need to explain that to give the characters better motivation. Is that their family, they grew up together, they're not just hired hands. But then at the same time, if your family is so abusive to you and if you're so unhappy about it, why don't you talk to them? Why are you just being angry about it and then you just follow along anyway? In the animation film, we just accept that they are her cohort, but in this film they have to explain why they stay to be her family despite her being increasingly crazier and crazier. One of the things she did was she broke them out of jail when she got them into jail in the first place. I guess those are her redeemable qualities, and that makes her more of an anti-hero than a total villain. And with all of that said, I don't think this film will be sitting too well with the fans of the original film, because one of the reasons that made Cruella de Vil so interesting as a character is that the Disney female villains, they just really don't give a fuck. And Cruella is the prime example of that. A woman with her own agency. She doesn't report to anybody else. She's just a total psychopath who seems to be having fun when she's doing all of these things. But this will not translate very well into film, because if you have a character like that, nobody will root for her. And the point wasn't in the original film that we root for her, but we do that anyway because we don't have these type of characters playing main characters anyway. So Disney wants her to be fun and apologetic, but not too unapologetic, because this is still a PG-13 film. She can't even hold her signature cigarette holder. She's not even allowed to do that because you cannot have smoking people anymore in films. But I think that's like a very small issue, and I can totally live without that part. And she's not skinning dogs in this one, and again, I'm not saying that she needs to skin dogs, but she loves dogs. In fact, she loves dogs so much that she's with a dog in every single scene. I said that earlier already. It's just they're trying so hard to contradict themselves. Like, they want something that is cool, but they don't dare to do that. They want a cool character, but they don't dare to do that because they're afraid of ruffling some feathers, I guess, and making a film that is hard to market. It doesn't have anything new to say about women in powerful roles other than a few girls boss moments here and there. Oh yeah, and she stole that last name because she saw it on a car and she thought that sounded cool. Yeah, did we really? It's just one of those things that, you know, we just didn't need an explanation for. And it's just so tiring because I've seen it before where they have done a good job of trying to translate a character. And I think a great example I want to bring up is Harley Quinn, played by Margot Robbie, did an excellent job of having a crazy girl who is just having fun as well. And no, I know that DC movies are not perfect, but she's also not here to teach any of us a lesson about morals. And they don't waste time explaining to us why her hair is blue and pink. And they also don't explain why she is bad. Like Cruella, they have to explain that it's because her mother is low-key a psychopath, and that's why she has inherited the psycho gene. I mean, yes, Harley was corrupted by the Joker, but she's also not defined by him, you know, maybe early on, but later on she kind of became her own person. She had a whole film about that. And you root for her not because she's good, you root for her because she's cool and she does cool things. And lastly, I'm not even going to attempt to pick apart the queer baiting in this film. All I'm going to say is, Disney, if you want to appear as progressive, you are going to ruffle some feathers. If you're only going to half-ass your LGBTQ depiction because you cannot go all the way, you can only hint at it, and then you do a whole marketing campaign about how it's your first out character, it's just, nobody asked for that. I would rather you not do that if you just keep telling us that it's this first gay character or whatever. At this point, it's just so disingenuous to watch you promote your first out queer character over and over again for different films that I honestly think the community deserves better than that. Just stop. Okay, just stop. It's fine, just stop. I talked about earlier that all the characters' motivation were a bit unclear, you know, Jasper and Cruella, but none of them are more unclear than this Alex character. If you cut all of the scenes with Alex in it, this film will remain the same. I don't think he even interacted with anybody other than Cruella in this film. It was very obviously a character that they just forced into the film to appear more progressive. So with all things considered, Cruella has everything a good film is supposed to have. It checks all of the boxes. So a clear hero journey, you know, his mom was killed and now she's gonna take revenge. Great costume, great sets, and great acting from the performers. And I guess, a functioning cinematography. But that's also what makes it so painfully formulaic and obvious. And I know a lot of people are talking about it lately, and I love the fact that Martin Scorsese coined the term theme park movie, because now we finally have a way to discuss these movies, because this is 100% a theme park movie. You know, a movie that makes you feel good at the moment when you watch it, and when you leave the theater, you don't have a feeling of anything, and it doesn't have a message, doesn't have a stand. And I get it, this movie have appealed to many moviegoers to make $1 billion, and that's fine. And I think the world also sometimes needs films like Cruella. It's just like I watch every single of the MCU movies, and I saw every single of the series, and I've seen all of the Fast and Furious movies, so I'm fine with that, and it's extremely entertaining to watch Cruella in the cinema. So if there's one thing, maybe we don't need to be educated at every film, and I think that's fine. We might not even have all of the mental capacity to do that anyway, and a lot of people are going through extremely difficult times, and if this film can bring them some joy, then I think that's a job well done. The reality is just that nobody asked for a film like Cruella, and it also doesn't have to be tied up neatly in a bow. Everything needs to be explained away. I'm not even going to call this a misfire, because like I said, some films are just there to entertain, but also we didn't need a Cruella adaptation, and I think this film could have worked better as a standalone without the baggage of the intellectual property of Cruella the character. I respect all of the people that worked on the film and the sweat and tears they put in this film, but I think their talent could be better put in films that create new imaginations for a new generation. Anyway, it got kind of heated in the middle, but those were my thoughts of Cruella. What did you think of the film? Did you like it? Did you hate it? Did you see it? Comment below and let's start a discussion. In the meantime, stay safe, wash your hands, and I'll see you next time. Bye!